You're the perfect blend of elegance and style, and your ride should be no different. The 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid meets all your needs, from business to brunch and everywhere in between. With head-turning details like a sleek front end, plus stylish interior and an available 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and seamless tech integration. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more about the new 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid.
British Spy Stories Season 4 Double Agent Episode 7 David had suggested to Kate earlier in the day that they go to dinner in a restaurant up in the hills and outside of the city tonight. They drive up, then talk and laugh. The food and wine are exceptional, and she realizes halfway through the main course that she's going to sleep with him tonight. They get back to his flat and make love until the early hours. The curtains are open, and the moon is their only illumination. 2 hours later, Kate wakes. She is half lying across David's body as he sleeps. She can feel his warmth, and the duvet is pulled right up over them to keep out the November air. She rolls off him and onto her back. She knows that she'll walk out soon. She always does. Maybe she'll block his calls too. No one is allowed to get too close. That is why Kate became an assassin. It's a job that you can only do effectively if you remain in the background, hidden away from your prey, until the time comes to strike. She rarely uses many of the details of the deep cover life story that London constructed for her when she joined MI6. She tells people her deep cover name, Suki Warren, because all of her false papers have that on them. But she rarely tells them anything more. Even her fake secrets are private to her. As they were falling asleep, David had set an alarm for 5:30 a.m. as he's flying to London today. That alarm will go off in a couple of hours, and she doesn't want to be here when it does. Kate moves silently out from under the covers and pulls on her clothes. She makes her way to the street and walks to her flat as it's only half an hour away. David doesn't know where she lives. That's another part of her protection. Her brain is awake now, and there's no point trying to sleep, so she makes coffee and goes online. She is about to start a game when a notification appears on her screen from L'Equipe84. She clicks through. As promised, it's the details of the first assassination job that they're asking her to do. The message only says that all the detail is in the attachments. There is a document and a photo attached. She opens the image, and the face that appears is one that she knows. It's David's. The front doorbell rings at the house on Ashworth Road in Maida Vale. Becky knows it will be Sylvia because they have been messaging each other earlier. Becky relates what's been happening today, after Lily's school rang her at her office and told her that her daughter had been sick, so she needed to be collected. "Gavin's on a trip to his constituency today," she says, as she loads the coffee machine with a pod. "So I had to take the morning off." "How is Lily?" says Sylvia. "Sleeping. She did look unwell though, so it was for the best." The machine produces one of their drinks and she reloads it. After they've been talking for a while, a buzzing noise starts. It's coming from one of the shelves at the back of the kitchen. "Do you want to get that?" says Sylvia. "My phone's here." She puts her hand on her own device in front of her on the counter. "What's that then?" "It must be Gavin's." Becky walks over and picks up the phone, which is now silent. "Missed call," she says. "It is Gavin's. He'll be annoyed that he left it. I'll call the local party chair later and tell them." She puts the phone down on the counter and takes a mouthful of coffee. Then it buzzes again, but only once this time. Becky looks at the screen. It's a message which she reads, then screws up her nose. "What is it?" "I'll read it to you," she says. "Wanted to talk? We should meet up soon for dinner. Rose. Someone in his office? There's no one called Rose in his office." The women look at each other. Then Sylvia says, "You said you trusted him with women?" "He's probably perfectly innocent," says Becky, but Sylvia has a disbelieving look on her face. "Don't look at me like that. That girls' night out can't come soon enough, Becky. Show the old man what he's missing. What about tomorrow or the day after? Can you get a babysitter?" "Yes, I can." She smiles, still wondering about this woman called Rose. The water on Lake Zurich ripples only very slightly as Luke steers the powerboat away from the mooring outside Amandine's house, with its 2 passengers on board. There's enough sun to make it vaguely warm. Oscar Zetkin had arrived exactly on time, at 12:30 p.m. Amandine had been effusive, and Luke had collected a food hamper from the kitchens to put on the boat. Luke knows the lake because he used to spend long days during his school summer holidays skimming stones on the water or playing on rowing boats near the shore. He turns the craft northwards first to keep any sun on the passenger deck while they drink their Long Island iced teas. "Thank you for inviting me today," says Zetkin, as he and Amandine stand on the low back of the boat, watching the ripple patterns in the water. "I love coming out here, but rarely get the chance," she says. "I do make an effort for my special friends." She smiles at him. "Can I talk business for a moment?" he says. She nods her acceptance. "We'll need some funding soon for a new project I'm starting." "What sort of scale?" Her eyes don't leave his. 40 or 50 million. "When you say soon, what do you mean?" 3 weeks. There's a big shipment arriving then." "All right," she says, and he nods formally to her. "The only thing I would say," she adds, "is that my team who delivered the funding to you last time told me they felt unsafe, Oscar. I'd like to avoid that in the future." "My apologies, Amandine. We did have some interference from a small-time competitor, but I've put measures in place to prevent any more of that." There's a brief pause. Then she says, "Let's eat. My cook does these lunches so well." They start to explore the hamper and chat about food, the lake, and sailing. The craft has reached the northern half of the lake, and Luke turns it south, whilst his passengers eat and talk. They're passing one of the marinas that line the banks of the lake, when he sees a boat coming from the east shore at speed and heading straight towards them. He doesn't take any evasive action at first, as he thinks it must be teenagers messing about. But as it gets nearer, he tightens his grip on the controls in front of him. Something feels wrong. They're close now, closer than feels comfortable. He can see the boat is painted dark blue. It has a covered cockpit and there are 2 figures on board, crouching over the controls, both wearing masks on their faces. Luke maintains his slow cruising speed, but the blue boat is within 100 yards now, and it isn't slowing down. "Madame," he calls to Amandine. She looks at him, and he points to the approaching craft. The blue boat starts to take a fast, wide arc towards them. "Madame, get inside," he shouts. Amandine and Zetkin are slightly panicked and move quickly into the cabin area. The blue boat is 50 yards away now. One of the crew stands up and raises a handgun. It gets nearer. 3 shots ring out and thud into the side of Amandine's boat. The blue boat curves away in the water and creates a wave of swell as it turns. Zetkin appears from out of the cabin, his face red with anger. "Go after them," he shouts at Luke, and hurries to stand beside the chauffeur. Luke pushes the twin throttles away from him, and the boat rises in the water. He twists the wheel, and they turn north in pursuit of the blue boat. It's 100 yards in front of them. Zetkin's fingers are white where he is holding the bar around the cockpit. Gradually, Luke is gaining on them. As the blue boat heads straight towards Zurich city centre, Luke wonders if the pilot has local knowledge, as the lake ends at the Kai Brücke Bridge, and the small harbour beyond that is a dead end. Zetkin reaches into his jacket and pulls out a Phoenix Redback 9mm pistol. Luke can feel his heart beating so hard that he thinks it will come out of his chest. As they get nearer the dead end, Luke can see the land rising to the west and scattered white and yellow buildings along the eastern bank. His face is cold from the air streaming across his skin. As quickly as it took off, the blue boat slows to a near standstill. Luke continues straight towards them. 50 yards, 30 yards. Then, a great wall of water suddenly spews out of the back of the blue boat as it spins around towards them. Luke and Zetkin watch it accelerate, heading for their prow. Luke wants to turn away, but thinks Zetkin will want him to keep going straight ahead. The blue boat is 30 feet away. The crew member who shot at them before again raises a handgun and releases rounds. But this time Zetkin is ready. He fires back at them. The shooter pauses. Zetkin fires another 3 times. The shooter reacts. One of the bullets seems to have hit its target, and the shooter staggers backwards, then goes down. The blue boat comes within 10 feet of the powerboat before it roars away and disappears off into the distance. Luke starts to maneuver and continue the chase, but Zetkin puts his hand on his arm. "It's all right. We can stop now. I sent a clear enough message to them." Luke looks at him and nods and slows the boat. Zetkin walks back to the cabin, where Amandine has been all of this time. He sits down next to her. "Who were they, Oscar?" He takes a deep breath out. "I don't know." "What did they want?" she says, looking at his face. "To scare us, I imagine." She frowns. He puts his hand on her arm. "I'll sort it out, Amandine. I'm sorry that you had to get caught up in all this." Hans drops his speed as he approaches the mooring at the edge of the lake. "Gabby, you okay?" he says, without looking back at her, but she doesn't answer. He touches the side of the dock with the boat, jumps from the controls and throws a line over a bollard on land. Only then does he get a proper look at Gabby. She is lying on the seating and has pulled her face mask off, but her eyes are closed. He moves over to her. "Gabby, Gabby," he says. She opens her eyes but doesn't speak. Hans can see from her face that she is in pain. "We need to move you. The car's only 50 feet away." He puts his arms under her body and lifts her off the seat. He staggers as the boat moves under the shifting weight. Only his military experience allows him to transport her across the craft and onto dry land. He runs with her to the Volvo, wrenches a rear door open with one hand, and lays her down across the back seat. He inspects her condition. "Gabby," he says, close to her face. "Tell me where it hurts." She opens her eyes again. "Shoulder," she whispers. "I need to take a look." She doesn't react, and he pulls out a field knife from his back pocket and begins to cut away the jacket from the area of the wound. He finds the med kit in the car and brings it back to where she is lying. He douses the area around the wound with antiseptic, and he can see her controlling her reaction as the shots of pain shoot into her body. But she doesn't make a sound. "I'm going to lift up your arm," he says, and explores where he can see damage. There's an exit wound, Gab. He smiles at her. We can repair you, but you'll need to rest. Her eyelids are fluttering. Hans gets into the driver's seat and travels as fast as he thinks he can go, without putting her in more agony. They reach Sigma 17, an MI6 safe house on the outskirts of Zurich. The place is an apartment with 2 bedrooms on the first floor of a small grey building on Concordia Strasse. Hans carries her inside and lays her down on a bed, then pulls the covers over her. He finds painkillers, then makes food and feeds some to her, lifting her head up so that she can swallow. Gabby is weak. He can tell. She has lost blood. He knows her well enough to know that she will want this stupid accident to be forgotten. And for that reason, he doesn't put a report on Oberon about what has happened. After eating, she sleeps. He cleans the wound and bandages her shoulder. The light is fading as Hans finishes. He sits next to her on the bed and watches her face for signs of restlessness, but she seems to be comfortable. An hour later, she stirs briefly. She is saying something, but he can't hear it. Hans leans close in towards her. Thank you, she whispers. Then she falls back to sleep.